Hello and happy Thoughtfully Fit Thursday. I have a really special guest today. And I want to start by teeing it up and letting you know that back in 2019, it was a couple of years after my husband's arrest, my co author Eliza Waters and I found out about this phenomenal play called Accidentally Brave in New York City. And we got on a plane and went and saw Maddie Corman in this one woman show. And she was phenomenal. She was brave and vulnerable and courageous. And she shared her story. It was powerful, it was emotional. I couldn't believe that I actually had the courage to go up and talk to her afterwards and get the picture. And I am thrilled to have Maddie Corman with me today. Good morning,
Good
Maddie, and
morning.
thank you so much for joining me.
It's my pleasure. I appreciate all the work you're doing, and I'm happy to see you again. Not after having done that show, just
Yes,
on a nice morning.
it was a phenomenal show. So maybe you could just start by sharing for our Thoughtfully Fit fans a little bit about who you are and how you've come to do what you do and your story.
Okay, I'll try. I'm not always the greatest at talking about myself, sounds not true since I did a solo show. But I am and have been an actress primarily from the time I was young. I was kind of a kid actress, and I grew up in and around New York. Um, I went to college. I kept working. I got married. I moved from LA where I had moved back to New York City, and then moved to the suburbs where I had and have. Um, I had three kids and married my dreamy husband, who I loved very much. And this is leading up to why we know each other, why I created this show. Um, I'd been married about 20 years. I'd known my husband 20 years, married a little less. Um, had my three kids were at that point 16 and two 11-year-old twins. And early one morning, the police came to our door. I was actually on my way to work. I was doing a guest spot on what I call a semi terrible TV show, and my daughter called screaming. And I didn't honestly know what was happening until later in the day. It was just chaos and terror and confusion, and my brain couldn't even compute what was happening. And later it became clear that my husband was being arrested for illegal images, um, child pornography. Oh gosh, now I call it. Anyway, horrible, horrible, horrible. And my whole world came crashing down, as did the rest of my family's. And in that moment, it certainly didn't occur to me that I should write about this. I just needed to get through each day. Each day was terrifying. Um, and I, a year or so into this, I don't love the word journey, but let's say journey for the sake of brevity. Um, I have been so helped by who I call an angel. There were a number of angels, but there was this one particular angel who reached out to me. I did not know her. I I had a couple of friends in common, which is how she found me. She also found me because my husband was well known enough, I guess, as was I, though not famous, well known enough for this to be the scandal to be in the paper. Um, and so this woman found me and helped me. She held my hand. She told me that she understood. Her husband um, is a recovering sex addict, very different, acting out. Very, I didn't even understand that that was such a thing, or that there was a thing called porn addiction. I didn't know anything except that my life was over, and the person I loved more than anything in the world and trusted, probably loved my kids more, but trusted more than anyone in the world, had this secret. And who was this person? So I don't know how to say anything else about who I am, but through this angel and certain other people, I was able to keep moving forward. And at some point, I said to her, "How can I ever repay you? I mean, what you've done." I say that still to this day. And at one point, she said, "Well, just you'll do for someone else what I did for you." And I don't think she meant you should then go write a one woman show about it, but I'm a storyteller, I'm a performer, I'm a person who processes by kind of showing what it looks like, not talking about it when it's done. And it was such a lonely time that I just felt this burning desire to actually be of service, to do what had been done for me by saying, okay, well, I'm just going to tell this part, the really ugly, messy part. And I didn't think too much about it because I'm actually not, the play is called Accidentally Brave. I'm not by nature a very brave person. I really don't like change. I don't like conflict. I don't love horror. I hate horror movies. I don't like roller coasters. I'm pretty good with like holding on tight. And in this moment, and now actually in all moments of my life, I've really learned that I have no control over anything. And so it's just it brought me so, wow, there's a lot to say. It brought me so much comfort to hear about someone else's story that I thought perhaps mine would be helpful. So that's
Wow.
what I did.
Thank you for sharing and for being brave enough to use your talents in such a powerful way. I can speak for myself how incredibly helpful it was, and so only know the thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people who saw your show and benefited from it, that it also served to help them in their own journeys.
I
And so
hope so. I
yeah.
hope so. And you know, I have been, and every time I get a little scared doing interviews because there's also a lot of people who don't feel that way, and a lot of people who feel like, and I want to be very clear that I am well aware that I am not the victim here, that my children were never harmed by my husband in any physical way or any no, alive, you know, in real life acting out. But there are certainly victims of child pornography. And I want to be really clear that I'm aware of that. That is not my story to tell, but I believe that in talking about this, that I hope that an awareness will help there to be less of that material, less of people viewing that material. That material is widely available, which I have no idea, and I think it's horrific. I just want to be really clear because some people don't get that when I speak or tell my story, and it's a hard thing to explain because spoiler alert, um, I I stayed. I'm still married and with my husband, and some people think that means, well, people have a lot of opinions about my choices.
Oh boy, I get that on a very deep level. And I'm curious. Clearly, you endured a trauma,
Yes.
and all the complexities that come with that, and it's really complicated.
Yeah. I absolutely, and I've had so many women and some men who've experienced what I would call betrayal trauma, which is a very specific kind of trauma. Um, and it is a real thing. It is a real thing. I absolutely have PTSD. I absolutely had to have a certain kind of recovery process, both therapy for me, meditation, 12 step, that really addresses this particular kind of trauma. Um, and there are lots of resources for that. I tell people who reach out, I work with women now. I couldn't believe, and I'm sure any Many people who've had this specific kind of thing happen keep it very quiet. And again, it's not that I'm so brave to talk about it. It was in the New York Post within 24 hours. So it was already out there. But I have met in my time, since I've started talking about this, so many shocking numbers of people who've been through similar situations. But if there's any way to keep it quiet, they keep it quiet. There's so much shame and fear, um, and rightfully so. But in talking about it, I truly believe that's where some of the healing comes in, for all parties, for everything that has to do with trauma. And shame is just killer. Shame is just, it destroys um, people. And I think, in my experience, women and partners of, I just think there's a lot of women who struggle with codependency. I know I do, and have. And that feeling of, I have to protect my family, certainly my kids. And I still struggle with that. But for me, talking about the things we're not supposed to talk about has actually been helpful in my family. Not keeping this particular angel who I referred to earlier said, "Oh, you're so lucky that the story's and that it's public." It's like, no, I'm not. That is, it felt so out of control and scary. And I said, "Why would you say that?" Because I really did trust her, but I thought she had lost her marbles when she said that. She said, "Because you and the kids do not have to do the dance to keep this a secret. That is not your job. And if you could, you probably would."
Wow.
And holding on to a family secret when when you're traumatized anyway, but you're out to the world. I've done, I get a lot of help around this. I needed a
Yeah.
lot of help, and I continue to get help. But certainly early days, I got a lot of help. And I have a therapist who specializes in partners, partner trauma, betrayal trauma, sex addiction, porn addiction. And she finally let me join a group. I wanted to join a group immediately, but she said I wasn't ready. So when I did join, it was very helpful. And meeting women like you, and a couple men, but mostly women, who are these bright, funny, feminist, badass women, allowed me to stop blaming myself so
Mm.
much. Um, and there was one woman in my group who I love who didn't tell anyone before she joined group about her husband was arrested. Not everybody in the group had the same story at all, but her story was very similar to mine, and she did not tell another soul for almost a year. And as hard as it was to have, I don't recommend having everyone know this your secret immediately, but to have no one know is also incredible. It's just an incredibly lonely time. And yes, trauma is real, and my body felt it. I lost so much weight so quickly, which is also a strange thing because it's very visible. People's reaction to that was interesting. Like, lucky you, Um, but I that was how my body processed it. I had panic attacks. I would shake during the day, and I think there's a lot of people who judge the timing too. Like, well, now it's time to get divorced. And my very wise therapist at the time, I was like, well, I need to decide. I need to decide. Am I going to stay? Am I going to go? What's going to happen? And she was like, let's put a pin in that, because you're going to need to do this work that you're doing. You're going to need to put the oxygen mask on and take care of those kids of yours. And you don't have time right now to be in that mode. That's there. That option exists, but not today. And that was actually really helpful. So I don't know if that's helpful
Wow.
to anyone else.
It's so clear the amount of work that you have done for your own healing and recovery and in your relationship and for your family. And I'm curious if you would share any insights or thoughts I know when the news broke when my husband was arrested, one of the hardest things that I felt I dealt with was the judgment from the people around me, and
Yeah,
the harsh words. I remember one comment in one of the news stories said something about he looks like Jeffrey Dahmer, and I
mm,
literally wanted to throw up. What did you learn about? And I know we're talking very specifically about your story right now, and
yeah,
yet there are lots of people and lots of women who have experienced trauma in different ways that experience
absolutely.
judgment.
Absolutely. And the judgment of choosing to leave or choosing to stay.
You bet.
So many people have so many comments, and there are so many ways to get your comments out now. Um, you know, online, uh, social media. I had to get really quiet at first. I wish I could say I wasn't affected. And that I'm not. I'm still affected, but I had to get really small for a little while and be careful of who I was listening to. I had to get really in touch with what I actually felt and thought, and um, and and know that other people's opinions were not necessarily the truth, and know that there is nuance within a story, and know that. And I've again met so many people who, not to this extreme, but their husband's cheating and it's very public, or the neighborhood knows, and that very private time of working through a betrayal of any kind, when it's made public, is so extra challenging. It's actually another reason I kind of wanted to and continue to write about it, is because it's so easy. It's such an easy thing to go, are you staying or are you going? And that's not easy either way. And in between, the mess of whether, someone very wise said to me, you can leave, you can stay, but you're still going to have to do this work. This is still your heart and your person and your everything. Um, and what other people think has made me sad. It's made me angry. It's made me scared. Um, and I've had to, like I said, I've had to really reevaluate what other people's judgments mean to me, um, and know what is true for me might not be true for you. Um, who was really helpful for me, um, and who reached out very early on, were addicts, actually, of all different shapes and sizes. Sorry, there's some noise outside. I hope it's not too loud for
No,
you.
it's okay.
Uh, my person picking up the recycling seems to like really loud music. So, uh, um, addicts were willing in my life, some of whom I knew were addicts, some of whom I didn't, some of whom I was close with, some of whom just reached out, who were friends of friends or not as close friends, and told me some of their stories, of which allowed me grace towards my partner, and allowed me to share that with my children. Women who, mothers, good mothers, who left their kids in cars to go buy crack, um, good men who did terrible things, who loved their children and their wives, and who, because of drugs or alcohol or gambling or sex, were acting in ways that absolutely were not indicative of who they were as a person. And I couldn't see that in my own person. But knowing that they were giving my partner some grace allowed me to believe there would be some people who would. And I have experienced that. And there's a very popular question I seem to be asked, which is, how many friends did you lose? And did you lose friends? And I think a much more interesting question is, did you gain friends? And did you deepen your relationships with certain people? And that answer is absolutely. Because the people who can see past sensational, horrible behavior and can give grace are people who I'm really excited I get to be in relation with. So I'm very affected still by what other people think, but not enough to stop me. Um, and it's hard. It's hard because this is a kind of thing that people just don't talk about. So there's such a lack of knowledge, and it's it it hurts and it's exhausting. And and I know, like I said, I work with a lot of women. I do private sessions with people because it got so much that I couldn't just take everybody's phone calls and emails, but even just the people in my life, in my particular groups, that I know that is one of the most difficult things. And people who mean well, even people who mean well, say the most unhelpful, horrible things. So for a while there, I had to keep my world very small, including people who I love very much,
Yeah.
who I had to kind of step back from because it was just their anger, their judgment, their confusion was too much for me. And I had to get straight with my own first.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
to do some reading. I had to do some work. I didn't know the answers. And I think also sometimes as the wife, and even still, I'm expected to give answers that aren't mine necessarily to give.
Right.
I hope that made sense.
It absolutely makes sense. And I'm just thinking about the multiple layers, and I'm and the fact that actually I want to go into forgiveness, if that's all right. The fact that your husband is human and flawed, and the
Hmm.
people who were not handling themselves well in how to support and love you through this are human and flawed.
That's right. That's a really, really good point, to have grace for the people who I also was upset with. Nobody knows the right thing to say. You
No.
know, my mom died when I was 16, and nobody said the right thing. And in the time since then, which has been decades, I have been the person who's had to say something to someone who had something terrible happen, and I don't know what to say. But one thing I have learned is, instead of saying, I can't imagine, which is so for me one of the most off-putting things to say, because it just reinforced my loneliness. And I understand that you can't imagine.
Right.
But for me, when people say, I can't imagine, I haven't been through that, but I've been through some stuff, it's so healing and helpful. And and so sometimes saying nothing is helpful. Sometimes just being there and understanding that there isn't anything to say. Uh, there and time. It takes some time, and giving people some grace. Um, uh, I and I think that helps with, as you were asking about forgiveness. You know, for me, forgiveness. I'm a person who, you step on my foot and I say I'm sorry, my foot was there. I tend to go to forgiveness almost too quickly,
Oh, wow.
and I've been struck, with my own husband. It's like, if I forgive you, does that mean I condone the behavior? And the answer is no, what I have learned. Um, Forgiveness allows me to move forward. Forgiveness allows me to have an open heart for the rest of my world and my life. Um, I struggle a lot more with acceptance. This isn't what it was supposed to look like. This wasn't supposed to happen. And for years, and I would actually say still sometimes I wake up and go, wait, I'm doing this interview about what? This is not, I'm supposed to be talking to you about how to make money as an actress, and get your tips and talk about our favorite TV shows and this new nail color. I don't want to be the person who has had this. But that's not being an acceptance. So for me, my husband participated in unacceptable behavior, and I have to accept that that happened. order to forgive, in order to move forward. Um, so it's a practice, and it's not a straight line for me. Um, and allowing myself forgiveness in how I get triggered and get angry and mean. Um, I fall off the serenity wagon. I fall off the forgiveness wagon when there's a consequence or a trigger, or we um, I was deeply affected by this, financially, uh, socially, um, geographically,
Mm.
everything. My children. I think the hardest thing to forgive. Okay, I'm going to say this. The hardest thing for me to forgive is if you hurt my kid, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
And this traumatized my three my three people who are the deepest in my heart. My only gig is supposed to be to protect these three people, and they were deeply hurt and traumatized. So how can I forgive that person? And the work that I've had to do is go, oh, point one finger and there's three pointing back at me. I've hurt my kids. Maybe not. There's no contest that you win with that. Um, I have not been a perfect parent. I have certainly done things wrong unintentionally. I've never intentionally hurt anyone, but certainly not my kids. And if I didn't forgive myself, then I wouldn't be able to function, and I wouldn't be able to be the parent that I think I am. And, I'm with someone who works every day to make living amends to me and to our three children and to the world and to the victims. And I see that. And that is inspiring to me. And I work every day to forgive others, but also to forgive myself, because that allows me to be the parent that I want to be. I want to be the teacher to my children that says somebody falls flat on their face and we give them a chance. We're not martyrs. We don't say you can do whatever you want and you're forgiven. But time has helped that. I have a person that I love who has worked very hard for 7 years to show me, the kids, maybe the world, but certainly God. There's a spirituality involved in forgiveness for me, and there's a realistic viewing over time that someone is working hard at making amends and making things right. Are there some things that are unforgivable? I'm sure there are, and there are people who would say that's their line, and I might have said that before it happened to me. But I try to be a lot less judgmental of what people can forgive. I mean, in my own spiritual work on forgiveness, I've read stories of mostly women, but men forgive also, but women who've forgiven drunk drivers who've killed their kids. This is that go well. That's a whole other PhD level. But I had 20 years with this person also of really good stuff. It wasn't all bad. It wasn't like I was in this horribly abusive relationship and then this happened. And so I hope that answered the question. It's not a simple question and it's a long-winded, meandering answer, but it's a practice and I have to work on it.
It's a beautiful answer. And the layers that you reflected on that, of course, what's top of mind is finding forgiveness for your husband. But the layered nuance that you talked about, forgiving yourself and the complexities, and then forgiving those who did not handle this well, who were not there for you in the way you needed, who said the wrong things. Finding forgiveness is a practice, and that you tied it also to acceptance in such a beautiful, beautiful way. And so I guess the last thing I'm curious about is whatever you would be willing to share about your journey of moving through this and moving on and finding trust and love again. And after feeling so hopeless and helpless and devastated and betrayed, you have this beautiful story that you have put out in the world that has helped so many. How, any tips or thoughts that you have on that?
Um, yeah, I didn't think I would ever feel remotely okay ever again. Um, I didn't, I wasn't aiming for joy. I was aiming for survival. And I will say that I feel moments of joy. I feel moments of delight. I feel intimacy in my life in a way that I didn't before. So there's my cat,
Oh,
and
I love it. Oh, how
he
lovely.
brings me joy.
Yeah, what's his?
Um, yeah, I have sharing my story has been really scary and really healing. You know, I did do the play for a while, then we recorded it on Audible. So there have been people who have reached out from all, literally all over the world, and that's been helpful for me. That's what healed me, was listening to other people's stories, and sharing my own has been healing, and it's been scary. I find that, hey, I find that community, you had asked earlier about community. I thought I lost community, and actually, we've all lost some community with COVID in the last couple of years, and that was another devastating consequence. But I have built new communities. Um, I thought I'd just have to give that up, but I haven't. I found people, and like I said, not like, well, I got to settle for these yahoos. Like, at least they'll accept me. I have found amazing communities. I find I get to be really picky about who I speak with. And what's helped me to survive, even I would say as recently as yesterday, is being a little gentle on myself about it not always going so well. It's really hard. And I have some deep fear and darkness that probably lived in me already, but that was activated by this. It reactivated my grief, it reactivated my tendency towards worry, and that's still there. And I'm trying to be a little gentler with myself, because what I did after my mother died was say, everybody's going to be sick of me after about a year. I better look like I'm okay.
Hmm.
And I wasn't okay. And I want to tell you that I'm getting there, but I'm not okay every day. And, you know, I put on some mascara this morning and wanted to look like I'm just casually fine for you. And I am. I'm not secretly going to hang up with you and fall on the floor, but I still get on the floor sometimes. I'm still scared sometimes. I'm still really mad sometimes. So I, for me, this time around, this trauma, I'm just allowing myself to say, I'm not an expert. I'm just recovering along with you. And I want to be careful to not be the one that's fine now. I am still the patient and the healer, I hope. So for me, the tools I used to help with survival were therapy. Like I said, for me, it was really helpful to have someone who specialized in what was happening, which is a CSAT, talking to other, mostly women. I'm very privileged. I'm aware of that. And my husband was able to go to an inpatient rehab. The family week that happened that week allowed me to meet some other women with very different stories. They are a part of my survival. They saved my life. I think they might say I saved theirs too, that little army. Um, People in 12 step, which is free and available, have saved my life. Um, I uh, I tried every form of meditation. I'm not good at it, but I keep trying because it actually works and helps. I am not against drugs. They didn't. I'm not, as of right now, on any kind of anti-anxiety or anti-depression. That just didn't work for me. But I have no I know that they work for other people. Um, I did do couples counseling again with someone who specializes in this. I kept my world really quiet and small for a while and started to go out. I joke sometimes that I did the play so I wouldn't have to have lunch with people to explain what happened. Like, here you go, here it is. Um, and I got on my knees because I had to, not metaphorically, but literally, because this was too big for a person or a pill or a book. I wanted to, all I wanted was someone to tell me how to get better. And for me, it required some sort of spiritual reawakening. I think I had that within me, but it was dulled by the everyday. And reminding myself that success isn't what I used to think it was, and marriage isn't what I used to think it looked like. And there are some things in my life that are really difficult, but I live a very, I would say, for the most part, authentic life. And that is something that I longed for before any of this happened. And and it's still really hard. It's still really shameful.
Yeah.
Um, it's still really upsetting.
Mhm.
And I talk about things a lot. I talk about pornography a lot. Not something I thought I would do, but I think it's a really, really big issue. And I know there are people who go, well, you're the extreme. But just talking about even legal pornography and what that's doing to our relationships, our kids, our sexuality, I'm interested in talking about difficult things now. Um, and that actually helps me. I'm not as interested in talking about the weather anymore.
Wow. That's not accidental. I mean, that's brave, downright. I'm curious, and I know that people watch.
Sometimes I watch really bad TV and drink tequila. I mean, I'm not all. I do. I need to numb out sometimes and
Yeah,
take time alone, and so
yeah. I know that people watching and listening will just be curious. How are your kids and your husband doing?
yeah. I always try to say that's not my story to tell.
Mm.
You'd have to ask them. However, I will say for a long time, I'm very happy to do this interview. I get a little scared to do interviews, but I think for a long time I was like, I know you're not going to believe it, but in spite of everything, my kids are doing okay, all things considered. My kids right now, today, I'm going to knock on every possible piece of wood around me, are
Yes.
not just okay, they're really great
Oh.
just for today.
Mm.
That does not mean they're going to be great in 10 minutes. And I am, of course, now going to spit and do all the things to say, but really great. And each boy of mine is in a new place. They've just started college and are really in successful. What my new definition of success is, serenity and light and feeling those uncomfortable feelings and knowing they're going to pass. In having good friendships, having really strong relationships with me and with their dad. Um, my husband, thank you for asking, is in graduate school getting his social work master's and hoping to help people.
Wow.
Yeah, I feel like in some ways I held the car up, like, it's so big on me, but I feel like I held the car up off my family and no one is asking me to hold the car up anymore, but I'm still a little bit doing it. Um, and I have my own nervous system to deal with, but everyone's like, we don't really. My daughter is uh, writing and working and performing in um, and she's amazing. And I've learned a lot from them. And they're trauma survivors, and they carry shame. And it's easy to say, "Oh, your show did all of this," but I worry that maybe it brought undue stress to them. So we're a family in recovery. We are not always uh, perfect at all, but when we're together, it's really real. And you know what my husband has, which most people never have in their life, and I think he's very grateful for it. He would have to speak for himself, but he has had the people he loves the most devastated by his behavior, and he has had the most shameful thing he's ever done out in the world and seen people actually say, okay, we still love you. And most people don't ever experience that. So I think, and you know, sometimes we're just walking the dog and taking kids to the dentist. Like it's not every day this heavy, big stuff, but we're a work in progress, and I feel safer now saying that we're together family. We take it day by day, um, but I'm okay today. Today's an okay day, but it's early. We'll see.
What the rawness and the vulnerability and the authenticity and all of that, like you've come through, you were strong, maybe even sometimes not by choice, but because you were the mom, you had to lift up the car, and that you are, it sounds like continue to have the journey, continue to work through this and recover and heal and try to find love and connection and strength every day as the story continues to unfold.
Yeah, I try, and and then I fall down, and sometimes I can't get. Sometimes I need a day,
Yeah,
um, or more than a day,
yeah,
but I feel like my resilience is like a muscle that I'm building, and I know sometimes I forget that I have it. Like when I get a disappointment, and I'm not even talking about this. I'm talking about like I don't get an acting job, or somebody didn't one of my kids gets a disappointment. It's like it hits me so hard, and hysterical is historical. I've heard, you know, I have an overreaction to a small disappointment. It's like you've dealt with all of that, but sometimes I feel like, well, I'm just right here, and then I go low, but I remember, and the bad feelings and the fear passes, but it's a real thing, so I just try to take it easy on myself, and I see women who are struggling in those early days, and I go, oh my God, it was so hard, it was so impossible, and I did not know what was next, and there were no books, and there were no shows, and there were no people talking about it. So if I can do that and help a couple of people, then maybe there's some reason. I don't wish this on anyone, but I will say the people I know who have been through betrayal and trauma, and I call it sex addiction, you know, you may call it whatever else, are some of the most incredible people. I don't know why, and I don't wish it on anyone,
yeah.
but it seems to be an incredible group of people. And
Thought,
I'm not here, I just tell my story. I'm not here to say you should stay, you should leave. I have no judgment about that. And I am, again, just to wrap up, I'm not a martyr. I'm not a person who's like, well, no matter what, we took these vows. We, I'm checking in
yeah.
and just seeing what works for this family, for this human,
And for this moment.
for this moment. That's
Yeah,
right. I have a
yeah.
very different kind of relationship with commitment, and it's not, I don't believe in forever. I believe in for today.
For today. Yeah, what a beautiful thought and way to end, and thoughtfully fit. We always ground our conversations in the core of the model, which is 3 steps. So if you're currently enduring some obstacles that feel heavy or impossible, just take a moment to pause and think, what other people in your life could help you through this burden? Do you have creative outlets like Maddie's play writing and all of the beautiful things that she has done? and then act. Take some time out of your day to enjoy the company, to meditate, to write, whatever it is, to be able to handle that trauma, those obstacles, the pain that you're enduring in your life. Maddie, thank you so much for sharing your heartfelt story with us. You have so much courage, and I'm wondering if you can just share, where can people find more if they are wanting more of you?
My kids would be like, "Who wants more of you?" Um,
Yeah.
they're like, "Enough already." Um, yes, I do have a website, maddiecorman.com, and I think if you are interested in ordering the play, there's a link on there, the Audible version.
That's
I'm
so cool. I didn't even know
I,
that.
yeah, yeah, I'd love you to take a listen and let me know your feedback. It's free on Audible, I think, and there's a way to reach me directly on there. I have a way that you can email me. I'm on Instagram. Um, though sometimes I go off when I get really mean comments, and then I go back on because I want to see everybody's kids, and that's how I see sometimes what my kids are doing. Um, uh, I'm on Twitter. I think I'm at Maddie Corman on Twitter, and and that's how you can find me. I'm still writing. I'm still telling this story. There's a filmed version of the play that's happening, um, and uh, and someone said to me the other day, "But aren't you tired of telling this story? Don't you want to move forward?" And just for anyone who's struggling with something like this, I said to that friend, "Yes, and whether I'm talking about it or writing about it or not, I think about it almost every day. It's not because I'm doing a show about it." And and I love your chart you put up. It really, that pause, boy, is there, you know,
Thank you.
higher powers in the pause for me. But I still immediately want to take action and fix. And I've learned, if I don't have any tattoos, but if I do get one, it would be pause. It's really hard to do. And I think you're doing such good work for so many of us. And I appreciate your work, and I appreciate you inviting me and making me be brave again, talking about the hard things.
Thank you. And I am thrilled to hear that you're making a film. I will say, you look at the picture from back in 2019 and the joy I had from seeing you, that others will be able to without having to wait for your next show or fly to New York City. That is fantastic. I can't wait to see it. We will put all of those links, and how wonderful that you've made it available on Audible as well. It was a very powerful experience for me, and I think for others to be able to learn and grow and hear your story and the rawness that you shared and the learning and the spirituality, all of those dynamics. So thank you very much for stepping
Thank you
away
so
from
much,
your
Darcy.
life and your cat and your meditation and your kids to be with me today, Maddie.
It was a pleasure, Darcy. Thank you so much. And, it was great to meet you after the show. That was a lot of, that was one of the most fulfilling things, was the people who I met and who came up to me. And, your story is very similar in a lot of ways, but people would come up who had stories that had nothing to do with mine, and that was very affirming. And most people don't have the opportunity to tell their trauma and have other people go, "Me too, me too." Our stories are different, but the feelings, the fears, the everything, the shame. There's a lot of shame out there, and I believe in kind of shining a light on things that live in the shadows, and trying to blow up shame a little bit for everybody.
Amen. Thank you so much. On that note, everybody, thank you for joining us for Thoughtfully Fit Thursday. And we wish you all the very best. Maddie, it was a pleasure having you.
It was a pleasure to talk with you, and I hope I get to see you in real life soon.
I will look forward to it. Thank you.